and they're like 60 quid a pop. So, you know, And I've been doing it for 41 years actively. So, and I teach and I work in this field. I talk around the world. I'm really privileged. I will play with somebody new. I'm not going to play with somebody casually, however. So there's a difference in those two things. Don't take everything personally. I would really honestly say that. Somebody says, no, I don't want to do that with you. I don't want to do something. It's not always personal. We have an idea of who we want to meet, who we're attracted to, who we want to play with, and how we want to do things. And a lot of us have a list. Fuck that list. Anyone here got a list of the sort of person they want to meet? Got their pros and cons on what they look like, who they are, and what they're like, and all these ideals and these fantasies.
Everyone has like a bit subconsciously.
Yeah, we do, don't we?
Yeah, I've never met somebody on my list.
No. And some of the best relationships you've had is somebody who was never going to be on your list, and that's the truth as well. But we all have them. So be aware of that subconscious work that says, "Well, I wouldn't do that, wouldn't do that." Learn from people. Go and talk to. They said earlier in the newbie talk, go and speak to the stallholders. They'll tell you about weights and fields and different things. They'll talk to you. So the person that crochets a lot, I've got one of the figurine, the bottoms. I've got a very small one in my house, which always makes me laugh when the top comes in again. Bottom. I find that really funny. It's orange, clearly, with a black G-string on it, and I've got it in my TV room, and it's so cute. But I've also got an educational one upstairs, and the educational one says, "Don't hit here. This is semi-safe. This is really safe." So plenty of us are willing to talk and to teach and to help. And I would also make sure you get multiple voices. Don't go for one voice. There are a lot of people who think they're experts in this field. There's no such thing. And even if you have a fucking doctorate, and I've looked at a couple, I really want to do the transgenerational epigenetic scripting of sexually segregated women. And I also want to do another PhD in retroactive withdrawal of consent as a method of shame. But I want to read them. I don't want to actually write them. They're really complex and they're interesting, and they're my favourites. Like, I'm really interested in those. I'm interested in how the generations before me make me who I am and why. But so plenty of people are willing to talk and to find things out, but it doesn't mean they're experts. Take everything you hear and read with a pinch of salt, honestly, because everyone out there thinks they're brilliant at this and they think they really know what they're talking about. So please hear. Go on, what are you going to say?
I was going to follow up just to ask, what would you suggest putting in the first aid kit?
Now just say that you don't always find your partner in the kink world. Like my partner, we work together.
But you can convert a vanilla any day.
It's not always in the kink world where you'll find someone to play with.
Yeah,
it's
you'd
an
be
everyday
surprised.
life.
I think being a little bit open or being obvious, and I'll come back to that in 1 second. So being open and obvious, it does help. I mean, it's not appropriate to go up and say, "Excuse me, you look like the sort of person who take it up the arse with a large cricket bat." You will get sacked. So, but I think there are little things that we can talk about. So in my dating things, I talk about traditional relationships. I talk about different ways of being, because not only am I a cut queen, I really do like control. So I would say I'm not a kinkster, I would say I'm a lifestyler. And I think there's a distinct difference between the two. Now that means kink comes into my lifestyle sexually, but I would argue I'm a lifestyler. I'm not a kinkster. I don't just want to have it in the bedroom. I like some control. I like to feel that the person's in charge. I like to feel that they're more than I am. So again, work out your own identity, because that helps you attract and talk to people in the right way as well. So I'll come back 1 second. In a first aid kit, what I would have is a lot of the basics. I would make sure, so you've got to be really careful. Plasters, even people can be allergic to plasters. And the sort of things we create needs something a lot fucking bigger than a plaster. I would make sure in your first aid kits that you have basic paracetamol and painkillers. That's a really good idea. Even if someone is having a bit of a crisis, paracetamol also helps mental health. You may or may not have read that. It helps pain go away, because we have one main part in our brain that really works with pain. So if you're feeling really overwhelmed or not so good, I'm not suggesting you'll go out to take a shit ton of paracetamol. Please be careful. It's one of the most dangerous drugs on the planet. It is not. It's a very easy drug that can kill you. However, it can also help calm us. I would make sure I've got anti-inflammatories. If you believe in things like anti-inflammatory creams, like arnica or arnica gel and tablets, I would also have those in there. I would make sure that I've got safety scissors at all times, not normal scissors. Those things kill people, especially the sort of stuff that we're doing. If you're going to do rope, and you've never done rope before, or even if you have, anyone here done rope before? Keep your hands up for 1 second. Keep your hands up if you've cut rope before. So some of the hands go down. So please, before you even start, or if you have started, go and get a bit of rope at home, hold it in your hands and cut it. Feel what it feels like to cut it, because it's a very strange, you're the rope person, wouldn't you agree with that? It's really weird when you cut it.
And if it's unintentional, it's completely different things.
Completely. And if it's wet or sweaty, again it changes, which by the way, depending on where you put it, it gets very wet or slightly wet. So
Sorry.
just bear that in mind.
Can I just say, with safety scissors, what you should probably look for is trauma shears, because you can get them online. They're like £3 on eBay, but they have a little piece of metal that goes sideways so that you can slip it onto someone's skin and you're not going to cut their skin.
That's what I mean by safety
Yeah.
scissors. So
I'm just
trauma shears,
clarifying.
whatever. So they're used by
EMTs.
EMT, but they're used in any major hospital to cut your clothes off. That's what you're looking for. So I always make sure I've got some of those. You need to have a look. But
So, yeah, I just wanted to. Well, I've seen several people out there selling them, so you know.
yeah,
anyone
they're being
who's
sold here.
I just wanted to add. I realized it's a good idea to not get them in black, because everything I have like a big black bag with lots of black things, and then it's been a dark
Or
club.
take them on nail polish. Anything like that you can put on them that really helps, because you can get fluorescent like nail polishes, different things that really highlight stuff. So yeah, that's a very good point. I like that one. Yes, so yeah, there's a pair. And they are in black.
Fold out.
They're fold out, they're slightly different, but you're talking about the ones with a flat base that have the circle at the bottom as well.
Are those the Leatherman Raptor ones?
Yep.
Oh, nice. Oh.
Jesus, you're right. Get the room. That's a different techie conversation.
Wouldn't you work
Okay.
with that?
I would make sure that you have saline solution. If you're going to do any cutting, piercing, or anything else as well, make sure you have saline solution. I would make sure you have gloves. I would make sure you have anything that's going to make anything sterile. You have to act quite quickly if there's a wound. If you do not know what you're doing, do not touch it, do not do it. The biggest thing you need in your fucking first aid bag is your phone to dial 999. Make sure your phone has battery. Please make sure your phone has battery. And think about your psychology, because a lot of the time, a lot of us go, oh, fuck, but if I phone them, and then, oh, I don't know what to do. But if someone could already be dead in that moment. There was an episode in Scotland a couple of years ago where two drunk people got together. They were a man and a woman. She wanted choking, he wanted to choke. They were both utterly pissed. That's another thing I would have in your fucking bag. A little note saying, don't fucking drink or take drugs if you're going to play. If you are not compos mentis, she passed out. She actually died. He went, I think I'm going to get fucked. Well, I don't know what to do. So he went for a walk. He went for a walk for an hour. He didn't even try and resuscitate her. He didn't know what he was doing. Now, that wasn't done as a form of abuse. I can give you many stories where kink is used as a form of defense. It happens a lot. I think the most crazy one was the one where he did actually chop her up and put her in a suitcase and she was in tiny pieces. I don't think that's kink as a defense, but hey, I might be wrong. If any of you are into that, I suggest you leave now. So, please. So make sure you've got your phone on charge, and make sure you're somewhere playing where you have service. Make sure you have a backup. So, for example, Rhaina Gray, anyone know the famous kinky porn actress? Rhaina Gray. One of her worst stories is she was out tying with somebody. He was very diabetic. She was being tied to a tree. He absolutely, sadly, didn't have the right level of insulin in his body. He collapses. He pulls the rope. As he collapses, he dislocates her jaw. They're in the middle of nowhere. She cannot get to her phone. Please have a voice command on your phone. Make sure it's there. Make sure it can hear you so you can dial 999, especially if you're the person tied up. Even then, make sure wherever you are has got service. I would make sure, as I say, so saline solutions, this is just off the top of my head. I would also make sure that you have what you can get nowadays. You asked me about them, didn't you, the other day? So yes, you can get steri strips. However, if you are cutting or doing something a little bit more major, you can now also get, so you can get them on Amazon or anywhere else. There are other stores available. So they're like two sets of plasters, stick-on, but they're not plasters. They're proper tape that we use in the medical profession. And these are incredible. They have cable ties across them. So if you have a major wound and you have cleaned it, so it is sterile, at least if you put that on and you pull it together, that person stands a better chance of not bleeding out and of it healing with less scarring. But of course, if you're not medically qualified, fucking hell, be careful. I would make sure, so I think as well, the problem is if I say too much to having a medical kit, we then think we can use it. So that's the other problem. Anyone here medically trained? Okay, so anyone here first aid trained? If you're not, why not? Please go out and get first aid trained before you start playing. However, if you're going to do that, if you're going to start doing breath play, anyone here into breath play? It's the most dangerous thing we do. It's very exciting. It's thrilling. It's more dangerous than waterboarding. Anyone know what waterboarding is? Do you know what that is?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's torture. Cloth preferably over the face, a shit ton of water when they're tilted back. Now you might then think, hey, I really know what I'm talking about. I'm going to put that person in a recovery position because they're not breathing properly. Is that what you would do if somebody's in a probably recovery position 9 times out of 10?
No.
You'd start resuscitation. If they have swallowed a shit ton of water, what would you do?
Sit them up.
Sit them up. Sit them up. They are drowning. And it's not going to help a lot, trust me, not for very long. There was one really famous case a couple of years ago. Fuck, am I putting anyone off yet? Shit. I'm going straight and vanilla, fuck that. Listen, there are so many kids on Tweet Talk talking about vanillas being really boring, covered in bruises and choking each other out and using water. It's fucking terrifying. But there was a case a few years ago. I think I mentioned this Friday night, so I don't know why it's coming up again. There was a situation, sadly, where he ended up with $180,000 worth of meds and treatment for brain damage because they did waterboarding. And she was a nurse partner. And she said very clearly, I didn't know what to do, and not in this scenario, it went horribly wrong. Do you know the question I ask if someone's about to play with me, about to do something dangerous? What do you think I ask? Let's have a few guesses.
Have you done this before?
Have you done this before? That's a good one. If someone says no, that can be okay. Let's have a conversation. If someone says yes, my next question is, what have you done when it goes wrong? It's never gone wrong.
Can you pay?
If it does go wrong.
What's your plan? What are you going to do? What else is going to happen? They're not my main question. But go on. But I asked them.
Can you pay for my medical expenses?
You heard me on Friday. That's what I said. That's different. So my favourite question is, are you going to fund me for the rest of my life when this shit goes wrong? That's an interesting question, isn't it? Are you willing to take on responsibility? I'll tell you my earnings. That's what you've got to cover every year for the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years. I'm being a bit hopeful. I'm 58. Are you going to cover me? Are you going to cover my medical bills? The good old NHS. No, I want to get in quicker. I want to do something. Are you willing to cover it? Are you willing to cover the person you're about to play with? If you want to play at that level. It's an interesting question, isn't it? By the way, that couple, they split up. Too much for both of them. It ruins their relationship. And often when you have a carer in a relationship, when you've got two people who maybe started out sexual, you're like, okay, I can say it now. If anyone's got a wallet with a rainbow card in, check if you've lost it because they just found it. I love the fact that people are going to it now. And so they broke up because when you have a couple and one ends up really ill, like I had cancer a few years ago, if you have somebody who looks after you, the sexuality and the sexual aspect of that really does start to die down because people don't have the same lustful type feelings for each other when the care comes in, and it impacts a lot of relationships. So are you willing to look after someone? I like bandages, but I don't like bandages as a common type with a tie. I prefer like a Rex type tape. Do you know the tape I mean?
Yeah.
It sticks to each other. It sticks to itself. So if you have a problem, I have a lot of this in my, I work a lot in cheerleading. Yes, I know, bizarre correlation and connection. I have this thing called trunking, and trunking is really important. So trunky is one of those little suitcases that you pull along, and he's a tiger. And I've got the Samsonite bigger one, and trunky has everything in it that I actually need for any form of medical emergency, and hair emergency, or costume emergency, or any other form that absolutely comes. And I have a lot of tape in there. I also have, if someone pulls a muscle or does anything, I also have KT tape in my bag. So if somebody's really, like if someone's dislocated or popped a shoulder, it's gone back in. If you know what you're doing, you might be able to KT tape it up. Before they go to hospital, it might help. If somebody has a dislocation or something awful happens, do not try and put it back in. If there is a break involved with a dislocation, putting it back in can actually make the break a shit ton worse. So I know you think you know what you're doing, but unless you are seriously A&E type level of qualification, just leave it alone. It's the best thing you can do. But we all like to think we can help. Why don't we just pop that hip back in? Let's just No, it's really dangerous. Anyone here medical? What else would you say? If you are a qualified medical person, what else would you say? Sorry? Oh, what? Sorry? Say it again. I'm a bit deaf because I'm allergies. So, like, the problem with allergies is we never know what someone's going to be allergic to. If you have allergies, please make sure you have your EpiPen or anything like that ready. Giving somebody allergy medication when you don't know what their allergy is can actually make things worse. But it's still a good idea. Ask the person if they have allergies, and if they do, let them have their pen ready. Know how to use it.
I was going to say know how to use it because.
So fleshy parts often, stomach,
I've never had to
thighs.
use one, but I carry one, so it's making sure that someone knows.
Well, self-injecting is a big thing. Well, I was at Worlds this year for a week. So Worlds in cheerleading, we took 2 teams out. We've got 87 kids going next year. And one of the kids had broken her ankle, so she was given blood thinners. And when you're given a blood thinner, it is quite a large, it's quite a large needle. And she's like, I can't do it myself. I can't do it myself. I'm like, okay, it's not a problem. I'll take over responsibility of that. Let's go for it. And she said, why doesn't it hurt when you do it? I said, because I'm not frightened to stab you. If you are cautious with things like needles, you go, oh, is that okay? You okay? You okay? They're like, fuck, can you really hurt me? Straight in, off we go. But again, knowing where to do it and how to do it, please become trained on these things. It makes a real difference. So I would have steri strips. I would actually have the more advanced one if you're doing more cutting, because you asked for those the other day.
I did.
And they're very simple to get, very simple to have in your bag. Again, you need to ask the person what allergies or everything they do, because even if you start playing with some toys, some people are allergic to different things that you use. Rope has a different, like a rope burn or anything else as well. So like I would also have burn medication, burn gel and different things as well. I would also make sure I have non-stick wound pads. Then I would use the vet tape over the top, because you're better off putting something over something when it's very simple like that and go straight to healing. Because what most people grab is a fucking tea towel. Do you know how full of germs that shit is? Your tea towel is not a good thing to put on anything. We had a kid again at the gym the other day. She was running around outside in the car park, and Brian said, "Is Trunky at the gym?" And I went, "Yeah, I think it is." I don't know if it was or it wasn't. But again, you go to grab tea towels and other things. I would also go for some ice packs. However, ice packs aren't always a solution. Sometimes heat is a solution. It depends on the. We live very much in a rice world, which is all about elevation and looking after something and getting it cold. However, healing comes from heat. But if you get straight back up onto something that's been heated, you will hurt it again. So you must ice it again straight away afterwards. So ice packs can be really good. So can heat packs. I have certain medications in my bag as well for migraines and for different things. I would also, this is ridiculous. Let's ask, who here cannot swallow a tablet? Okay, so someone is like, I make sure I have Calpol meltlets in my bag. And the reason I have Calpol meltlets in my bag is because what I find is a high percentage of these youngsters cannot swallow a tablet, which means they can't get something in, whereas they can let it melt.
And really interesting when I did a wilderness first aid course, they were like, have non-lubricated condoms. Snip the end off and pull that over.
It's very good for a burn, and it's very good for being watertight, and it's, yeah. And you can also buy stuff that already does that. You can buy all sorts of tapes, but yes. The problem if you use that and it's a lubricated condom, the lubrication can really impact what's happening with the burn or the wound. If you are doing something with fire or mucking about and clothes get involved, do not peel the clothes off the human being. Please. Because guess what happens when you do?
Take the skin with it.
You take the skin with it. Leave it. Just leave it. Unless you have proper, not peeling it, I would also have burn stuff in my bag. What were you going to
There's
say?
a horrible one with someone that fell in tar, and because it was just, they were sealed inside it, they literally had no scars whatsoever at the end of it, because it's sealed over.
Yeah.
Because it's sterile. Like, ouch, just wait for your skin to peel off so it came off.
I mean, it's horrific the things that can happen. I would also say doing nothing sometimes is better than doing something. Anyone here into piercing another human being or cutting? When you pierce, a lot of people can go in too fast and cause all sorts of issues. The worst thing you can do is pull it out when it's wrong. Leave it in, leave it, and let a medical professional deal with it, please. Does that make sense? Fuck me, how many people have I put off so far? Well,
A good starting point if you want to make a first aid kit, go to Halfords and buy a car first aid kit.
because it's good for injuries,
yeah,
like in a
it's-
trauma
The
base.
majority of the injury-based stuff that you're going to potentially experience, the kit is already in there. You will have to add a few things to
Yeah.
it, but more importantly, it'll be in a bright green bag with the word first aid on it.
And it doesn't
Which
look
is
too suspect in the car.
And
No, I have to paint it orange, but you know. But yes.
I have no idea why.
Trunk is even orange. Everything is bagged individually, so I know where everything is. So when a kid comes up to me, I had a kid dislocate their shoulder recently, and I was able to act immediately. She went to first aid, but a lot of the time, first aid also don't know what they're doing and won't work with a lot of these injuries. They really won't. And in cheerleading is one of the most dangerous sports. The likelihood of you breaking or dislocating or doing something is exceptionally high. It's a lethal. People say, it's not, you just got some pom-poms. No, absolutely not. And they won't always deal with it. So then the kids come and see me, or I've got something in my bag that I can work with. You who ask, I'll come back to you, I promise.
So it's a little bit off topic, but it's a question I've wanted
Hang on,
answered.
was yours on topic?
Yeah.
Go on, can you say that first then, please? I promise I'll come back.
Rather than having to deal with most of the case,
Yes, you do have to find a partner. So I'll come back to yours in 1 second, because that's a little bit about finding a partner. We are out there. I am a female submissive who is single. I am fussy over the sort of partner I want to meet. I'm happy alone. I don't want casual play. I think there's so much pressure still from that when we go out, that either you're up for a fuck or you're up for being easy, that it's quite hard. So we don't tend to respond well to that. There are plenty of us that respond really well and do want to meet people. You are more likely to meet people in real life. The amount of approaches I get, also, for me, listen to what the person is telling you. On my profile, it says, do not be under the age of probably 40. I don't think that's unreasonable. I'm not ageist. I'm fucking 58. I played with a lot younger. I've done a lot of things in my time. And actually, I still... Oh. Let's just dig, shall we? I think really excessive age gaps, especially with very young people, can be a little bit fucking creepy. I'm sorry, that is my opinion. Actually, if you look at the research later and you really start to look at this stuff, it's not always a good idea. It is especially, I'm really sorry, so I'm about to fuck everyone off. It is especially more damaging. Oh dear. When we take into account if you've got a much older man and a much younger woman, there is a lot of history in the gay community of large age gaps. So epigenetically, there's something different happening there as well. It's a lot more accepted, there's a lot more protection, there's a lot more people that go out and talk about these things. Often, I'm not saying it's really bad if you've got someone in their 30s and their 50s, I'm saying if you've got somebody who's under the age of 22, 23, with somebody who's in their 50s. Why? I'm curious about that. That's all, I'm just going to be curious about that for a little bit. What is that person really after? What's going on there? And that can be great and it can be fun, and sometimes it isn't. We're looking for somebody we can manipulate or be easy with or anything else as well. So I would listen to what someone says on their profile. If they say to you that you're in the right age bracket, then of course approach them. I would also, Taryn, and say that you need to go out and meet people. However, a lot of, you said subs and you said women, so that's what I'm thinking of. It's really difficult because we do start to withdraw. I'm really happy in my life. I go to the pictures alone. Fuck me, I am old, so pictures. I go to the cinema alone. I go on holiday alone. I'm really content in my life. I don't need somebody else to make it okay. I've done a lot of work to make sure that that is the case. However, a lot of us are really desperate to meet somebody, and we feel that somebody else will complete us and make us okay. So I think being okay with yourself is important, and I think a lot of women will also now avoid social situations where we just feel we're going to be hit on quite a lot. And that makes a real difference. Yes, dating apps can work. People meet their love soulmates on dating apps, at least for those 3 years anyway. There's always another soulmate waiting to meet you. Can I just point that out? Boom, share the joke. It's funny. It's got to be funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, dating apps are brilliant when you find someone, but most relationships, you know, don't make a long-term relationship anymore. Anyone here been together over 15, 20 years?
16 years.
16?
Just ended 28.
Just ended 28. 11. So, but most, it's quite complex, isn't it? We live in a very different society where we're very much into what's present, what's good for us, and not the long term. Often what I meet is a lot of people who say things like, well, I just want to see how it goes. What's in it for me? Really good question to ask. What's in it for me? What am I going to get out of that? Well, go on.
So, progressing from your How would you meet someone in a vanilla environment that would have potential to become that playmate for you?
How do you convert people?
Not converting, it's about having a common, well, they might not even know what kink is.
Yeah, I agree. And I think a lot of people know what 50 Shades of Grey is.
That's how our relationship started.
Do you know what?
It was vanilla.
Yeah,
It was
but
kink.
I do think we've got to be really careful about dissing 50 Shades of Grey. I'm sorry, but we do. Everyone says, oh, it's not consensual. Yes, it is. They sign a fucking contract and they argue over it for quite a while. Is it perfect? No, but you fucking show me anybody who does contract at that level. Penny an hour, most of us don't do it. Who was here for the newbie talk? And Phil said so much about consent, didn't he? Let me tell you something really shocking, and I teach that fucking workshop, right? It doesn't exist. Consent does not exist. I'm going to say something really controversial now. The consent you get is as good as it can be in that moment with the knowledge that you have. It will never be perfect. It will never be 100%, and it will never cover everything because you don't know the fucking consequence of what you're about to do. Psychologically, emotionally, and possibly physically. My hips still have to be injected with fucking cortisol because I'm being punched so often that my bursa sacs are split. I did not know that when I was 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. You keep going. Now, okay, I was also a professional dancer, but believe me, I didn't fall on my hips that heavily that often. It is from doing the kink stuff that I do, have done. So we do have to be really careful. So converting vanillas, but not quite. And we can bring up things like that. We can bring up saying, I like an alternative relationship. Is that something you've ever thought of? I like the idea of a little bit of power play. I like the idea of a little bit of authority transference, which are the words we use now. We don't tend to use power exchange anymore because you can't give and won't give away your power ever. You think you can, but you won't. So have you thought of more traditional relationships? But actually it's really important to me that respect is still in there, that care is still in there, and actually our communication is really good. I would honestly ask the questions. I've as I say, I've run thousands of these workshops. What most people would tend to agree with is they want to know about somebody's mental health, sexual preferences, and or physical things that might get in the way within at least 3 months. How much time are you willing to invest in a relationship and then it not going where you want it to go? But then you get the feels, because that's the trend, isn't it? We catch feelings, apparently. We don't. They're not a virus. So, we start to feel for people and people start to feel for us. So, and has it gone too far? Is it too late? And then you introduce this stuff and then you start resenting somebody, and so I think you've got to bring it up pretty damn quickly. That's what I think. Who agrees or disagrees? Generally.
Maybe not on the first date.
Yeah, why not? Do you want a second?
Maybe.
But maybe why?
Well, I think if you're looking for just a quick chat, it doesn't matter. But if you're looking for something that's more meaningful, then you've got to like them outside the kink world.
I agree.
Not just for what they do in the bedroom.
100%. I talk about Vink, vanilla kink. I want both. I want a Vink relationship. Yes. However, do you want a vanilla relationship without kink?
Been there, done that.
So if your answer is no,
No.
a second, a third, and a fourth and a fifth date are now a waste of your time if that person isn't interested. So why not bring it
But
up?
if they don't know what they don't know what they don't know.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely.
So it's a question is they might try it and like it, and then it's awesome.
It's our job to give someone an opportunity to try something. It's not our job to force into it. So or say that they should or they must, or if you love me, you would, or this is the only way to be with me. We just need to be clear about these things. However, I do think we can say, I like things a little bit more alternative. That's what I'm into. That's what works for me. Clearly, I'm not going to make you do anything. Here's a little bit of research. Here's somebody I recommend that you listen to, and could we talk about it? You don't have to jump straight in and say, this is my fist, it's going up your ass. So I think we can take our time, and it does take time, but it's open communication. And if somebody says, oh, God, no, look.
Maybe they're not for you.
Yeah. Also, again, this is something I said on Friday, and I even made up a new word called quinky. So a lot of my community are queer and kinky, right? Most of my community are queer, they're quinky. So this is a new word, I've decided it happens. It's happening. I don't care what it says, it's happening. Right, most of my community are quinky. They're mainly queer and they're mainly kinky. I think that that's normal. I love that. Normal. It's not. 6% of the population are queer that are out. That queer spectrum is everybody. I'm talking about anybody who identifies as not purely heterosexual. 6% of the population. Now, I reckon that's not true. I think a lot of people don't want to come out and don't want to write out those government forms and say those things. So I reckon it's higher than that, and it's increasing. However, it's only 6%. Is it 6% of your community? Because for me, it's about 80% of mine, 90, and I think that's what's normal. However, kink is more normal. You find it in everyday sex shops and everywhere. When you go into Ann Summers, apparently, I don't buy anything from Ann Summers, it's smack bang in the middle now. The whips and the jellies, you go into Ann Summers.
But some of it is fashion orientated.
Yeah.
The people wearing it don't actually know the meaning of the source or why that they just like the look of it because it's shiny. You know, I wear this
But
harness because it's shiny, not because it represents our play or any other.
Again, big difference between kinksters and lifestylers. It's much more easy to convert someone to having a little bit of kinky sex than it is to convert someone who's into the lifestyle. I've now decided I do not want kinky sex. I'm only interested in dating a lifestyler because I'm just not going to find it. It's not that easy. And so much goes against it. Come on, who's been brought up very traditionally where, you know, you shouldn't hit a girl? How many people have been brought up with that? How many girls have like to be hit? Fuck me, I like to be hit. Right, so, and it's interesting, but that clash of culture is really difficult. And it also is even more difficult when we put into, and we talk about this on Friday night, won't we? It's even more complex when we get cultures that are religious and colour and different things. Fuck, it gets more complex. You should never do that. You mustn't lose your virginity. You must have your virginity with a husband. You must never be queer. Sorry, go on.
Married before you have
Married before you have sex. Like, there's a lot of things that come in culture. And we're quite anti-culture when it comes to this sort of stuff. No, I'd quite like you to slap me in the face, please. Yeah, no, I want you to ram it down the back of my head and skull fuck me like you never have before. Really? Are you sure?
Did you say please?
And daddy is so modern. It sounds bizarre, but dad is such a modern phrase. Believe me, 20, 30 years ago, if you used the word daddy, you'd be struck off going into a club.
Why is that accepted than a mommy?
Because, hello, patriarchy. So, in one nutshell, it's much more acceptable.
Like, don't call me mom here, thinking, okay.
Yeah, so it's much more acceptable because of history, because of culture. Men traditionally have been in charge, are in charge, earn more, do less around the home.
Right.
So it's a much more acceptable, I'm really sorry if that offends anyone, take it how you will. That is the truth of our society still, that there is still a pay gap. There are still statistics around that change things. So women are much more likely, we're also genetically more likely to look for somebody who can provide because we're the ones that have babies, because we're the ones, and you know, hopefully that will change things. You push it out of your cock instead of my cunt, that's fine by me. Hopefully it'll change, and hopefully we'll find some other way of doing things, and hopefully we get to a point where we have this wonderful society where we have a lovely equality for people no matter who they are, where they come from. It's not going to happen in my fucking lifetime. It's not. And it's not going to happen in any of yours. Because there are countries that are so far behind if you want it worldwide. I live near Brighton. And everyone thinks, oh, Brighton is so lovely. It's so accepting. Really? We've had some of the most major attacks on, like, there was a couple of gay lads that were walking around only 2 years ago and he was nearly blinded from the attack that happened to him. He was punched so badly. His whole ocular, this whole socket around here was so shattered and smashed he nearly lost his sight. So please don't tell me we're all safe. We're not.
Right, just next question that you brought up on Friday. Depends on if you're
Hang
doing
on, I don't feel like I've answered fully for you. I'll come back in 1 second. I'm aware that you had a question as well, so I'll come back.
You went down the red herring.
I did, but that's why I'm coming back to it. It's really important. So I don't think it's as easy as you think it is. I think converting vanillas needs honesty and upfrontness without fear. However, if you are into punching, fisting, making someone squirt, pissing all over them and having a great time, that's very different to I want you to do as I tell you to do and I want you to wear what I want you to wear and I want you to be in a controlling relationship, because people are much more educated nowadays and what we see there is domestic violence. And that's quite frightening for a lot of people, especially if they've been in that scenario before. So I think go slowly, go honestly, and you don't need to go straight in. Like we all tend to go over somebody a little too fast nowadays as well. We love sharing too much. We love trauma dumping. We love telling everyone everything, and actually that other person isn't capable of
I
hearing
think
it.
vanilla sex, if you can't have vanilla sex and enjoy vanilla sex, then other stuff should spice it up. But if you can't have sex full stop without the kink,
I disagree. I think there are people that love vanilla sex that would not want to do anything spicy or kinky. I think there are very spicy and kinky people who never want sex.
Yeah, I have a
There are loads of players who don't want any form of sexual connection in their play, and they are all valid.
I've got a rope partner who's asexual.
Yeah. So
Just-
asexual, grey, like somebody who doesn't want any form of sexual contact in their play. There are loads. Anyone here don't want any form of sexual contact in their play? A few people. So like it does happen. So don't count them out. And just because someone's really good at sex, is that a learnt habit? Is that a trauma response because of the sort of society that we live in? Is that forming? So you've got to remember when we tend to have some kind of trauma response, we're fight, flight, freeze, but we're also fuck, friends, flop, foe, and fawn. People always forget them. There are others. And fawning and fucking are a trauma response.
lots of fawning.
Fawning is, sorry, what did you want me to do? What else can I do? How can I please you? What else should I do? Is that a submissive or is that somebody who's fawning?
Because they're trying to protect themselves from harm.
They've learnt that that's the best way to make that person like them, therefore they are safe, or they're just so conditioned that that's what they do. Fight, flight, freeze. I can tell you're asking. Friend, fuck, flop, foe, fawn.
You could have said any F word in there and he would have written it down.
Yeah, lots of
You could have
voices.
added fist in that list and it would have been hilarious.
And I'm truthful and I'd be like, so again, get your voices, look them up, they're all around. Don't add flirt. Well, flirt would come under fawning potentially. So fawning is I'll just do anything you want to do. And I think it's interesting, certainly as a female submissive, I have
In fact,
fetish is in there. No, it's not. So I think it's really important to also, when you are with someone who's in some form of authority transference, are they doing it from a safe place? Are they doing it from a good place? That fucking all this shit also gets in the way of basic connection. The same with consent. If I have to ask you every single second if you're okay, then we don't have a good relationship. So
I'm just trying to think, when you meet someone, can I send them over to you for psychological assessment?
yeah, if you pay my hourly rate, I'm
No, but it's difficult to start a relationship by saying, well, actually, I physically fancy you. Let's get to see if our personalities match. We'll go to see the shrink on the first date.
My question is, how do you, like, because obviously fawning, that called me out massively, but I also have obviously anxiety and depression and other things. How do they mesh together so that you know that it's not just something more underlying like an anxiety disorder and it's not just you being people pleasing?
ADHD?
Being tested. Highly likely.
So I think we have to be aware of the sort of symptoms that some of these things bring. We have to work out the balance. I'll come back up on it because I misread. You've got a question also whether you've got.
Sorry.
And you got
No,
one.
but it's very relative to it, so that's why I asked. So I think what we've got to be very aware of is, am I doing this because I want to be loved and I believe this is the only way I'm going to be accepted, liked or loved? And if the answer to that is yes, then don't do what you're doing. Because if I need to look okay for you, if I need to say something to be okay with you, look, have you heard of the word masking?
Yeah.
It's very trendy. Anyone does not know what masking is. So masking is trying to hide who you really are and pretend to be what the other person wants you to be, what the world wants you to be. Let's be realistic. We all need to mask sometimes. It is not appropriate when you are cutting your roses with Mrs. Smith at the end of the garden and say to her, she said, "You're right, yes, I'm fine, how are you? Yeah, had a good night. We had to go up the arse 3 times last night. Fucking mask. Shut up. She doesn't need to hear that, right? That's inappropriate. You don't, the life is not that free. You don't do that to other people. You just don't. The same is like, so I think you have to think about consent to the public and other people. I think that's really important. We make this assumption that we're really important. We have the right to live our lives how we want to. So some masking will always come into life. I didn't want to get up to work today because I think you're all a bunch of wankers. You're not going to stay there long. But if you really believe that, leave your fucking job.
Probably explains what got fired. Probably explains what got fired that time.
So I think if you're doing stuff in order to be liked or wanted or to be accepted, then I think you're maybe not doing it for a reason that's healthy for you. Does that make sense? If you're doing it because you like it and you want it, that's really different. However, is that a habit? So just be a little curious about yourself. That's what I always, just be curious is one of my favourite expressions. Be curious about yourself on a regular basis to work out why you're doing something. Don't go too fucking analytical. It's
I
not
mean,
worth it. You'll go down a rabbit hole. However, if you have ADHD, of course you will, and now you're going to look all of those up and see what they all mean to you, and you're going to write a colour chart, make sure it all matches, and see where you
I'm
fit.
gonna have most of it anyway, so.
Oh yeah, okay. So you're
Nice spreadsheet with colour
Are
coding.
you seeing someone to help with those things?
Yes, yes.
Right. So then again, take it to them. Have those conversations. Have those conversations with partners and be curious about yourself and the impact. It's really important.
Hi, question. So,
Is it a different question?
yes.
Right, can you give me 1 second? I'll come back to you and I'll go back to this question and then I'll come to you and I'll come to you. I promise.
And there's one online as well.
Oh, okay. Go on.
So this is something I've experienced regularly with rope bondage with shibari. Well, regularly. I've experienced it twice. But where I've been totally bound up, completely, quite extremely bound up to the point where I can't move. And what I've noticed is that summarily, I can access rage in a sense that I'm bound, I can't move, I can't hurt myself, I can't hurt anyone else, but I'm able to access this emotional experience of rage.
Because you can't control it otherwise.
Yeah, pushing against the ropes. So I guess my question is, could you expand on that with or for me for a bit?
So when babies are born, often what we do is swaddle them. Babies like to be swaddled. It makes them feel safe. And babies are born emotionally. So when babies are born, they have genetics and epigenetics. They have in utero experience, and they have some very natural emotions. Happy, angry, sad, scared, content, disgust, and surprise. We are born with 7 core emotions when we are born. We then learn behaviour, and after that, we then learn thinking. So for me, why the fuck do we do CBT at that end? Actually, we need to get to the feeling. You know that donut is bad for you, you know exactly how many calories are in it, you still find your hand going for it because you fucking want it. With me, especially if it's a custard, right? So we all, it's not that, it's the feeling that we're after a lot of the time. Depression should not be called depression. Depression should be called repression. And 98% of the time, it should be called repression of anger. We're not allowed to be angry. Now, we're not allowed to be angry. Let me expand on that for a second, the way we see it. You are entitled to your feelings. If I hear the word entitlement one more time, I'm entitled. Yes, you are. Of course, you're entitled to how you feel. You're entitled to feel angry. You're not entitled to be aggressive. And we get those two things really fucking confused in life. I fucking rage sometimes, but you wouldn't know. I'm going to talk to you about it. I find it really interesting when I'm on an English helpline over something. Let's say, had a phone delivered to the wrong place. This was years ago. Hi, Vodafone, yeah. Can I speak to a manager, please? No. Okay. I'm struggling with this because I'm getting very angry. Oh, there's no need to be angry. Well, I just said I was getting really angry. I'm really struggling with this because I have a 20-minute conversation and I always end up speaking to a manager. Well, not this time. Fucking 20 minutes later, of course I am. So we can get angry, but there's a difference between anger and regression. The question here is, why does it take you to be bound in order to access your anger? And for me, that would also be based in fear. This is not a therapy session, but I'm saying exactly how it is and how I would come up with that.
I've had therapy.
Okay, but not enough then if you've got this happening, right? I would say go back and write with it.
I use shibari as a sort of vehicle for it, to let it out.
But if that's the only way you can let it out, what are you going to do when something else happens? Just say.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah.
Like, we've just got to be a little bit careful about that sometimes. So why is it that when you are bound and stopped that you can then manage anger? And often the answer to that would be fear-based. I'm frightened of what I'll do. I'm frightened of what other people will think. I'm frightened of the impression that I give in some way, shape or form. However, being bound, and I will come back to you, being bound makes a real difference because it makes us feel safe in order to let go of everything. How many people sit down and do nothing here? Absolutely nothing on a regular basis. A few. Do you find sometimes when you sit down and do absolutely nothing that sometimes something starts to just brew and you think differently and you start to have different emotions? Yeah. Often happens, doesn't it? So I remember years and years and years ago a psychology professor saying to me that emotions are interesting. When we do nothing, it's like a pond. Often, yes, all that wonderful stuff can rise to the top, but so does the scum. And it's about that reflection of what's going on. So when we sit sometimes, if we're forced to sit, if we're not a doer, and then of course we also have to look at things like ADHD and neurodivergence and different things. Why am I always busy? Why do I talk so fast? What am I doing? If I just sit and I'm left with my emotions, why is it rage and anger that's there? What's that about? What's underneath? What triggers that? Now, if you're in a rope session and you've got somebody you can really talk to and you can access that, or you tie yourself, that can be really helpful. Fucking hell, I'm getting myself in trouble today. We've got to be really careful about using BDSM as an access to trauma. It's not always the best way, especially if you don't have a professional with you. It can be really handy. It can be really handy. A lot of people advocate it, saying it's a wonderful way to get in touch with your stuff, as long as it goes well. As soon as it goes wrong, all your stuff is just churns up like unbelievably. What were you going to say? Were you going to say something about that?
Yeah, it was incredibly relevant. So I think I've had my own exploration with the exact same thing of being very angry about a lot of things in my life, but not feeling safe for myself and other people to be angry and taught not to be aggressive. So I go to metal shows. Like I go to a gig and I'll have a great time in the mosh pit, and absolutely. So that is something I would recommend if you haven't been to find a metal show. Go to a mosh pit because the people there know how to give a shit about each other. So it's typically I feel safe there because I know that the other people there are also there to have a good time. So everyone's having a good time. It's not to hurt or get hurt, but that's just like it's to be aggressive.
Yeah, it's to release.
And then to be safe doing that. So I think a mosh pit, it's so I've not really had many injuries. And I've not many.
Black guys don't count.
Because it's not really a lot of people worry about like getting injured and stuff like that.
Come back, it's just a flesh wound.
Yes, but at metal shows, so compared to like other gigs and stuff where people like to mosh at like at a drum and bass thing. If someone's moshing at a drum and bass thing, I get really nervous because I'll see someone go down in a drum and bass mosh pit and then like everyone just keeps going. But in a metal mosh pit, as soon as someone goes down, everyone will pick them up. So I feel safe to be sort of aggressive and to get into the music, and I find that as a pretty healthy way of dealing with that. I'm not fixed. I'm still dealing with tons of stuff, but like that is like my own personal journey.
Well, no, nothing works for everybody all the time. Something will work for some people some of the time. Same with a therapist or anything else as well.
So another one like martial arts, because you're getting sort of chill outside release of doing martial arts.
Yeah. So I've done all of those. So I've worked with the feelings that I have, but it was more a question around that being bound and why is that such an access?
It's the safety. It's the safety of you cannot move, you cannot hurt somebody else. No one's going to judge you. You're in a different position, and it's all about the safety connected to the fear of if I access this anger, what's going to happen to me? What am I going to do? You might be frightened of your own anger, and that's really worth looking at because what are you frightened that you will do? What's that paranoid fantasy about what will happen, what you will do, and how that works? That's what I would say underneath a lot of those things. But I'm not your therapist, so. And that takes time. I'm also going to argue, interestingly, that for the first time in history, white men are really starting to struggle. And white men, for the first time, are starting to say, I don't know who I am, I don't know how I belong, I don't know who I'm supposed to be in life. Welcome to the rest of our world. Right? All our colours and genders and all our religions and everything else as well. Sanctimonious, it sounds. However, I do think for the first time, you are struggling more, and it's a new thing. It's not like if you had years like I'm a Jewish queer woman and I'm heterosexually, I look for a male-led relationship. However, I'm talking about thousands of years of oppression, and I get away with it because I'm fucking white. My colour skin makes me got Hebrew written all over me, but it makes it easier. Like going to Egypt is always interesting. Going to Israel is pretty easy for me, unless I've got those Egyptian stamps in my passport, and then their hands are up my arse frequently. And that's true. That is very, very true. So I also think a lot of white men and younger men and middle-aged men are really wondering, where do I belong? Who am I? I don't know where I fit in this world. And it's really new to white men to feel that way. And it's quite shocking. So all of a sudden they're sort of going, fuck, I don't know how to do this anymore. I don't know how to be in this world. Yeah, it's and actually, I do have some sympathy. And I'm also quite pleased that that's starting to happen because I think that's a good thing because it helps culture change and shift and move. And I also feel for you because I think you then start saying, oh, I don't know what I'm doing or where I belong or how these things are. And especially being brought up in a culture that says this, that you are everything. So I just think there's an awareness around that. And that can make us really angry as well. And that's really controversial to say, I know. Is this about this? No? Okay, is this about this?
Yeah, I was just going back to kind of dealing with trauma through King.
Yeah.
I kind of
if this is like a common experience, maybe it is, but the sense of feeling that my kind of emotional needs and my sexuality are often two kind of very demerged forces.
Yeah.
And it's kind of me in the middle, kind of trying to organise everything and make sure they get along. The place that you've kind of may not have arrived at, kind of like relative kind of personal contentment. I'm just curious kind of what your personal journey has been towards that, rather than, because I suppose one of my issues generally, but like my sexuality is definitely part of that, is in I feel I kind of, I'm getting into something, and then at the time it feels like, whether it's metal or martial arts, it feels like it's kind of benefiting for me and a very positive kind of release for all my whatever drives emotional energy. But then a sense of kind of a certain automation is taking over, where like I'm riding my dragon, we've gone way too far into the deep end all of a sudden. So I'm just wondering how, you personally have had experiences with organising your kind of sexuality and emotional needs under some kind of ego control.
Age helps. I'm old. Experience helps. Had a lot of that. I've had a lot of therapy. I'm a real big believer, though, in a pluralistic approach to therapy, because I believe it needs to be physical as well as emotional, as well as thought. I'm a really big believer in a lot of the modern movements towards somatic type therapies, for what's going on in our body and how do we move them and what does that mean, mixed with neuroscience, because I think that really fucking matters too, mixed with understanding. It's all about understanding yourself and what you're trying to get out of life. It's also understanding that you're not entitled to get everything that you want. I think you are being brought up, you are a lot younger than I am, sanctimonious talk about to follow, so I apologise, but I don't apologise at the same time, that was just polite. So I think you're being brought up in a world where you can't win. You are told that you are entitled to everything, you can be anything you want to be, and you should go out and get it. And then you're really struggling because you try to get it and you don't get it. And I think we have to come to terms with that. What is it that you truly want as well? Are the things that you want a reaction to things? I love a challenging therapist. I'm not a therapist who sits there and nods. I'm a therapist as well. Like, fuck are you doing that? What are you hoping to get out of that? What the fuck is going on? I think challenge is good in life. I think surrounding yourself with either family who are supportive, and if they're not, find your family somewhere else and find friends. Don't expect the world from them. I think when you look at the top regrets of people who are dying, like Bronnie Ware is a palliative care nurse who looked at the top 5 regrets of people who are dying. One of the things they didn't realise is that actually being happy is a choice. That's a crazy thing to say, isn't it? Because anyone's like, fuck off, it's not. That's what we think. But people who are dying, so palliative care is roughly 3 months to live. They also wish that they'd spent more time with friends and family, less time at work. They also wish that they had got to know themselves and realised that their feelings were workable and they could say things and to work with other people. If you're clashing a lot with your sexuality and what you actually need, I would say go and speak to someone who you feel that you can respond to. Don't go and see the first therapist, don't see anyone, fucking interview them all. Find someone who works for you and with you. I've been on a massive journey in my therapy. The only reason I found my best therapist is she thought all of us kinksters should be pathologised. And that's a real shame to me because she was such a brilliant therapist. Just one of the best therapists I've ever met. She's got lots of books, she's really amazing. She really helped me find that black hole inside myself where I just felt like that very young part of me had really disappeared. Like she really pulled that young part of me out. And I think we have to stop trying to fucking analyse ourselves. Yeah. What? Yeah. I think we need to stop analysing ourselves. We're all too, like, it's okay. Acceptance is really okay. What you want is okay. However, how realistic is it for you to find it? We're also living in, oh God, I start some strange fucking old woman today. It's quite shocking. Please feel free to leave if you're shocked. It's really difficult because also we're living in a world where you're told you can get everything, but that's not true. You can't. We don't all find happiness. How do we find happiness within ourselves? How do we find acceptance? Are you happy? Are you content in yourself?
That's a big question for everyone.
It's a huge question. But then the question becomes is why do you think you're entitled to happy? Why don't we just live with content? Why don't we look at finding the good? Like I can speak to a lot of my clients and they say, oh, everything's gone fucking wrong today. Everything? Yeah. Did you get up? Yeah, well, that's pretty fucking amazing. Some people didn't. And I'm not sanctimonious like that as a therapist, but we don't appreciate or value the good either. And that's really sad that we don't do that because that's really bad for our mental health. And sometimes we believe that either having part of us accepted more than anything else is going to be the answer to everything. If my sexuality is accepted and I accept it and my family accepts it, everything will be okay. Anyone here had to come out to their family and not be accepted? Like some families are never going to accept, they're not. It's then how you take that in and whether you accept yourself. That's what's really important. It's about you.
Yeah.
So it's a personal journey.
Self-reflection.
It's self-reflection. It's intra. It's not inter. It's not between you and I. It's intra. It's between me and mine. And that's easy to say. It's interesting because I have ADHD. I was diagnosed a long time ago. Can you tell because of how fast I talk and I'm all knowledge and the things I do. And I have to know everything. So I'm like a sponge. I have to have all this knowledge so I can give you the right answer because part of my history is falling. And that's a typical ADHD response. And I've had some awful things happen to me and done some terrible things. One of the things I love doing is accepting responsibility for any decision that I make. If I put myself in a vulnerable position, something happens to me, it's not my fault. I had a part in it. If I've done something, like when I had cancer and I was having chemo, I remember saying to my sister, for fuck's sake, remind me I'm choosing chemo because I want to live. She went, fucking weirdo. She's had cancer and she's had chemo and she's in secondary cancer, but she's amazing because she's still alive 20 years after having her second diagnosis. And she took me through my journey, and we both have the same breast, we have the same cancer, but they're different cancers, actually. And she said to me, okay, yeah. And I remember phoning her before the last one, and I said to her, she said, are you right? I went, no, I'm not right. She went, okay, what's wrong? I went, don't want to go in the morning, I'm not going, I'm not ended up in hospital again. I've been neutropenic, you know, everything. I had 2 lung clots in each lung. I had a really bad journey. I fucking hate it, I don't need the last one. I don't need it, it's crap. And she said, it was your decision. I went, I know, but I don't. I was sobbing. And she said, Deb, you chose this, remember? I went, yeah, all right, I'll see you at 9. Owning your choices is really healthy, and it's not something I'm not obviously doing anymore. It's not fair. The world hates me. Everything's against me. The most famous person who does that is Eel. He is famous. Maybe the world does hate him. I love an Eel person. I always want to pick him up and give him a cuddle because he's so gorgeous. However, the world isn't against you. The thing we have to realise is the world doesn't give a flying shit about you. That's what's worse. It's not against you. It's not trying to change your life. How do you make the most of being in the world? That's why the law of attraction is so popular at the moment. Anyone here like the law of attraction? It's really trendy and popular. A lot of stars are doing it. It's in new books and it's everywhere. I mean, I've wished about winning the fucking lottery for years. It's not for me because that's a ridiculous level of law of attraction. But what you put out there is also what you get back. So you need to do your journey internally to work out what is it that you truly want? What would that mean to you? What would that look like? Who can give it to you? And why would they? Why would they pick you to give it to? What does that mean? And also, how can I give it to myself? Now, that's a lot harder when we're talking about rope and play and sexuality. If we want to come inside somebody else or do something, we need that other person to do it with. But you're not owed that. I really think that's quite dangerous, that a lot of us believe that we're owed play or sex or anything else as well. So actually, how can I be the nicest person? Somebody said earlier, how do you be a nice dom? How do you be a good dom? Be a fucking decent human being, first of all. Listen, work out what the other person wants. How do you provide it? Can you, can't you? How well do you know yourself? That's where I would go, but I don't know if that helps at all.
Yeah, I mean, just like a follow-up, what's been like the distinction for you between kind of self-understanding and like over-analysis without arriving at like a place that's like horribly nihilistic view of the world?
The realisation of that the world doesn't owe me anything, that I'm okay as me. My definition of trust is different to somebody else's.
Can I just say something?
Yeah.
It's like I'm a Muslim, I'm a Pakistani, I'm with a white guy, my family won't accept it, ever accept it. I've made my bed, I've got to live with it. Yeah. If I let it get to me, I'm going to have mental health issues. So I've decided, okay, my family don't want to know me anymore. It's my life, I've got to enjoy it. And for my mental health to be okay, I've got to accept it. If I don't, I'll probably end up in a mental health hospital, even worse.
And I think it's nice to say, but it's not as easy as that. Like, we can make decisions. It is a really hard, complex journey to go through. So I really appreciate it because we've spoken about it before. It's really important. And it's also, the thing that makes the difference is if the analysis is doing you bad, stop doing it. I trust that I'm okay. I trust that I can do life. I trust that even if you cheat on me, if you're a complete wanker or you say horrible things to me, that's okay. I can do this. DBT, dialectical behavioural therapy, is a fantastic form of therapeutic approach. I love DBT. And one of the things it talks about is having a Teflon mind. And that is if I were to pour, if your mind were like a set of cat gut strings, and I were to pour a load of tar over it, why is it that bit sticks? If I go out, like I'm a size 18, I've lost quite a lot of weight recently. If I go out there and I go, "Oi, fatty," really fucking loudly, right? Number one, I hope everyone's really pissed off with me and think I'm a bit strange, or think I've got some kind of problem. What's interesting is the issue isn't whether the other person's fat or thin. There are a lot of people who are really tiny who go, "Fuck, she means me." And there are a lot of people who are large who say, "Fuck, she means me." And there are a lot of people who are all shapes and sizes who say, "I wonder who she's talking to." It's like life's coffee table, I call it. You can put a book down, it's whether you pick it up. How do you choose not to pick it up? That's by self-reflection and learning yourself. And I say one of the things I've learned to do is to trust myself and my instincts, because I'm the only one who wants to live with the consequences. You get a lot of opinions when you talk to friends and people. They tell you how to live your life, what you've got to do, and they know so much better. They don't have to live with the consequences, however. You do. And that really helped me self-reflect and think about, I love a bit of pre-morteming. It's really boring, but does everyone know what pre-morteming is?
Like a beat before death.
Before, so post-mortem is this person was killed by a blunt instrument to the head. Sorry if anyone's had that happen, but so this person was killed by a blunt instrument to the head, and then we might go further by saying this person was probably a lot older than them, or a lot stronger, or a lot taller. They'll have some idea of what happened and why. And then if we go to America, because we do a lot of forensics over there, we'll then go into this person is probably 30 years old, still lives with their mother and everything. It's like we'll make lots of suppositions, right? Because they're the classics. Pre-morteming is what NASA do. When you go up into space, they expect you as an astronaut to plan for the worst. You very often go blind temporarily at least once when you're in space, because the amount of tears that you have, 3 forms of tears, those that are chemically responsive, those that are emotionally responsive, and the 3 film layers that cover your eyes. When there is no way for that to leave your body, when we think about how we stick to the earth and what we do, they block up and it causes lots of problems. So they teach you in 0 gravity to do a piece of engineering, and you do it with both eyes open. You do it with one eye shut, you do it with the other eye shut, and you do it with both eyes shut. And you just get really good at it. You get used to it. I love pre-morteming my life. What is likely to happen there? If I do a little spidergram, all the things that are going to go right and all the things that are wrong, and I have 2 or 3 solutions, I'm way more likely to remember those solutions because I've already written them down and done them.
Basically, it's like just be prepared and think about
Be
the
prepared.
consequences they do.
And positive consequences.
Into the anxiety spiral, then you start noticing
That's what I said.
There's always
Positive
medication for that.
consequences.
There's always medication.
It's always okay. Yeah.
No, there's positive consequences too. And some exposure really does you good. So I think that's really important. Right, so I want to come back. You had a question, I know you had a question, I know you had
How
a
are we doing
question.
for time, by the way?
We've still got 15 minutes. I'll talk extra
The
fast.
topic you came up on Friday about, example, if you're doing knife play, the consequences of doing different skins.
Okay, so the research that's done on any form of skin is done on white skin, 9 times out of 10. There is a brilliant doctor, fucking forgotten his name, and I'm so sorry, who has done a whole book on how Asian, African, black, different colour skin responds to different issues. For example, if you are a person of colour, you're way more likely to keloid scar. Does anyone know that? I keloid scar though. So I'm quite interested in my own history. Why is that? But I'm not very white and I'm not very English. I do have an English passport, but I have dual nationality. So it's really interesting that you have to look at the different forms of skin that people have. How thin is their skin? What colour is their skin? Look at how somebody heals and has healed in their past. It's really important to look at it.
Like keloid.
Yeah, so keloid scar is when you kind of scar
Get like a bump.
inside
Raised.
out. So I've got a flat scar here, which is it here
You
or
see
here?
them with
Like from the
piercings
old-
when they get the bumps.
They're bumps. So you get a bump and it grows
Get
and
like
it
piercings,
pushes it
it's a
out.
little bump.
So the scar, instead of staying where it is, will push up and out. That's what a keloid scar is. So it kind of does that. So if you're doing any piercing or any practice on anybody, in that you need to find out from them, what is their skin like? What does it mean? You also need to find out whether people take blood thinners and different things that happen as well, because that impacts skin as well. The skin is the biggest organ in the body, but we all respond differently, like when we've got allergies or different things. However, different colour skin responds differently. So learn about cultures And I will try and remember the name of this doctor because, he did such a brilliant piece of research. And he's done this book because he realized when he was a medical student as a young black man that nothing was around like that. I fucking love him for this. He did the research himself. And he put out a book with everything in it that said, here you go, this is what other skins do, not just yours.
And that redheads stuff on there.
Okay, so redheads are also completely different. Anyone here a natural redhead? Okay, so you have very different pain receptors to the rest of us, genetically. So you respond differently to pain, and you respond differently to different forms of anaesthetic. So if you have a decent anaesthetist or a decent doctor, they need to find out. If you are going to play with a redhead, they will respond completely differently depending on the type of pain that they are receiving. It is a certain gene. I can't remember the name of it.
The MCR5, the rough consequences of that. Are they
Well,
more
the
sensitive or less
consequences are,
sensitive,
so
or-
they'll be more sensitive to electricity and differently sensitive to anaesthetising themselves to different forms of pain, so they'll respond differently. The same as they burn differently in the sun. Or just burn, yeah. Well, actually, with exposure over time, even redheads with the MC5, thank you for the reminder, they won't burn eventually because they have so much exposure. But then I've got skin cancer in my own, chopped out in a few weeks. I'm having a good time recently, aren't I? Too much sun exposure is not good for you anyway. So it's really important to understand if you are a redhead that you'll have a different response. You had a question.
I feel like most people have heard of BDSM tests and they can see like their higher level personality role. But I can't find any good resources for specific kinks you can learn about your partners, like preferences, hard limits, soft limits. I wonder if you know of any websites, apps.
I think a kink list is a really good idea to do. So I would look up a BDSM or a kink preference list. And what a lot of them do is that they turn around and they state, have you done this before? Did you like it? Don't you like it? And would you want to do it again?
Do you have something specific to suggest? Isn't there a website?
I think there are.
There's one, it's based in the furry community, it's called F-List. It has a very deep, comprehensive list of tons and tons and tons of different kinks.
But it also has a lot of furry, which isn't maybe
I was about to
applicable
say,
to
is it
everybody.
very
It covers all kinks. It has yeah. I think it's really good. I've used it in a lot of my BDSM. It has.
Does it still have the, do you like this? Have you done it before? Would you want to do it again? Because if not, you
no,
can have that.
this one's just a faves, yes, no's. It's like a tick box.
I think this
it's
should say, have
very
you done it?
basic,
And how did you
it's-
find it? So I would add those to it. There are
I
thousands
was
of
thinking
them.
about literally designing a building, like a website.
I was going to say, if someone is somewhere that doesn't exist.
If you want to do that, come and ask me. I'll give you all the questions. I'll work with you on it.
Thank you. Can I get your email?
Yeah, deborah.fields@gmail.com.
There used to be an app.
There used to be an app.
Grey. I don't think that.
Do you know what? There are a lot of apps out there, especially consent apps. Do not use one, they're not legal. I know you think if you gain consent on an app, you think, I'm in. No, you're not, you're out.
What's your email again? Sorry.
Deborah, D-E-B-O-R-A-H. I'm going to get fucking thousands of emails now from everyone. Perverts. Deborah.fields, F-I-E-L-D-S, @gmail.com. Now everyone can look me up. That's my real
Do
name.
you
I'm
also do
completely
you
out.
really like content creation?
I have over 670 writings on FetLife where you can probably find any form of question that you've had answered, and if you can't, I cover it in a workshop.
How do I find your that?
The kink shrink. Capital T, capital K, capital S. I've covered all you need to know about consent, all you need to know about negotiation, all you need to know about breath play. I've done a lot of those and have a lot of other writings as well. Mainly, I think I've covered nearly everything. I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if I haven't. Sometimes I change my mind too. Well, I'm a big believer in new research. My best friend and I, Poppy, we are in the middle of creating a whole new set. We were going to do weekends, but actually I don't think they're very effective. So I'm going to use Teachable, where I'm going to do a whole set of workshops that people can pay a very small amount of money for, not a lot, but I'm not fucking doing it for free. I do enough for free already. I see 2 people a week for free who are low income. I do some low income, but I'm mainly full and got a waiting list. And I run a workshop every other Thursday, and a lot of this stuff I just do for expenses. And I've been doing it for 10 years, so 8 years. Fucking hell, who cares? A long time. So I'm going to do some teachable workshops whereby I think if somebody takes all of these workshops, they're going to have an awful lot of knowledge about everything to do with BDSM, poly, kink, authority transference communities. And it is coming. Let's really, there's no such thing as an expert.
10,000
My
hours.
egos is about to get in the way, but I'm going to say it. I'm as close as you can get. Right, I am. And my supervisor, who runs kink therapy, says if he's got a question about anything to do with my community, he will go to Laurie Beth Bisley, or myself, and that's where he gets his answers from.
That's flex.
So that's pretty cool. And I found it really difficult for years to say that I am really good at what I do, and I do know, and I am really good at what I do, and I do know, but it's still really uncomfortable.
How many people would be interested if I did make a persona like that?
Loads of people would, and I haven't got a lot of
Those people.
I haven't got a lot of I haven't got followers, it's really interesting, not on non-social media, but I've got I think 18 or 20 or 1,000 on, so like, I would advertise it if you want to work.
Can I just say, when it comes to like kink lists and things,
That's the later
one of the most annoying things is that if you're on like FetLife or something, to manually add everything, and it's really, really hard when you're like, I'm into like most things here, and it's kind of just more of a thing of communication with whoever you're actually playing with.
I think the list is a point of communication. I don't think it should be used as just a list, and that's what always I would say recommend. Anyway, it's a sit-down discussion. However, I do think knowing what you're into, if somebody says to me, Deb, I want you to dress up just in heels and just in satin, and I want you to do this, and I want you to do it in a restaurant, or whatever, we're not going to meet again, because I'm not that fetish kink dispensary sort of person. It's all about the relationship, so that list wouldn't work for me, but it would tell me if it doesn't work for me as well.
Yeah.
But I think they should only be used as a form of communication.
I think it's also that you revisit the list. Same with the BDSM test, because it changes so drastically when you don't have experience to when you get experience.
But I think you change drastically through life. I'm 41 years I've been doing this. I'm 59 soon. I started at 17. I'm not the person I was when I was 17. And my experiences varied with varied people, and say, oh no, I can't play with you, you're too experienced. Fucking hell, I can't win. So, but I'm not experienced. I'm not experienced with you. I've never met you before. Therefore, we both start again from the beginning. So polyamory has things called radar meetings and different meetings that you can have a look at. You can look up radar meetings. But basically what they do, and I think every relationship, so I even say this to monogamous, vanilla human beings as well, fucking sit down once a month and have a meeting about your relationship. Preferably weekly if you're living together. How are we? What do we need to sort out? What was carried over from last time? How are we doing? What does this mean? It's all really important because we forget, especially when we start living together and we stop dating. When you dated somebody, you knew when you were going to have sex. You shaved those bits, you did that bit, you put your deodorant on, you sprayed a bit before you went out, you're like, oh. But when you live with someone, that's not planned anymore. And then people often say to me, how do you keep a relationship alive and sex alive and everything else as well? Well, new relationship energy can be lots of fun. It can also be really dangerous because we get sucked into it. We discard the old when it shouldn't be old, it's just the current. So we've got to be really careful. And part of making that work is having really good regular interaction with your partner to make sure that you're both on the same page. And that's really important. How are we? Where are we going? And then it's having the freedom to feel okay enough to have that conversation, because a lot of people aren't. What was the question online?
A question online. It's an interesting one, actually. I haven't seen this one before.
Oh,
there you go. How are you aware of where I'm paraphrasing this, the need, desire, or curiosity of being hit or hurt comes from?
Okay. So, no, it depends on the person, is what I'm always going to say. I would argue, I get interviewed by, this is interesting, I get interviewed sometimes by a dominant whose submissive partner comes to me and they'll say, you're not going to change them, are you? You'll be surprised at how many authority transference relationships have that in place. Or I go to see the submissive and the dom or the domme or the person comes in with them and I'll go, oh, no. If you want couples therapy or a joint therapy or a polyamorous type therapy, that's completely different. That's what you book. You booked a single. He, she, they are not coming in with you. That's not what we agreed. That's not what we consented to. I'm really worried I didn't come back to your question, so I will in 1 second. So I really think that that's important, that the need to be hit, the want to be hit, it's for a variety of reasons. It's psychologically, maybe it can be fight, flight, freeze, friend, fuck, flop, faux, fawn, where sexuality has got confused with it. It can be that we like to be degraded or debased, and we actually find that a turn on. Minds are very interesting, where synapses and neurons fire and how they cross over and what that means. It can be because we just fucking enjoy it. There are so many chemicals and hormones involved with pain that actually feel really pleasurable for a lot of us. And people tend to do kink either because they're genetically likely to do kink and the environment has allowed it, or they just see it as a hobby. We fall into either or category, which is quite interesting. For me, I'm pretty sure on the genetic links.
I was just small thing to add. So I've always thought that it could be like for the reason that people like horror movies or whatever. It could be.
You're right to say it's Japan, you mean psychological.
Yeah, no, it could be. What's it? Oh my god! Of course, I forget the word as soon as I'm going to say it. Yeah, kind of, but morbid curiosity, being able to experience something without actually being harmed.
And being able to push yourself into something. It could be that we need to suffer. It could be that we need to prove something.
It's
All
like
of
why we
those things
can't
come
stop
into
looking at a
it.
car crash.
But
We need to be able to experience something without.
And that's what I mean by
dying.
it being personal. It's really personal. So the answer to that is, if you get a really good kink friendly therapist, they might be able to.
Some religions, people, what the word, self-flagellate. They tell themselves.
Not just religions. That's not that it is religiously based, but it's normally secular and very strong. So it's like a lot of monks, a lot of people who believe they have to suffer in order to be accepted into heaven, or by God, or by somebody else. So that comes into it too. I just want to let this person have their question.
I was interested when you mentioned contracting earlier, which I was wondering if there's anything you recommend in putting a contract, how to bring up that conversation. Also, is there equivalent to like a more casual contract?
So contracts aren't legal; they're not legally binding, so they won't protect you in a court of law. And if anything, they'll prove your guilt. And so what a contract does is prove your guilt more than anything. So be really careful when you're writing a contract. However, it can also protect you because the CPS will look to prosecute for all sorts of reasons. You cannot consent to violence against you legally in the UK, nor can you consent or do violence to somebody else without it breaking the law. Anyone here who's had anything more than a love bite, you've actually broken the law. So the Spanner case that brought that in with Judge Brown, if you've had more than a trifling or transient mark, you have broken the law. Now, most people, most of the time, will not get prosecuted for that. However, so when you're writing a contract, it's all about what you're both agreeing to and what that looks like in the relationship about what's acceptable.
I don't really mean legally, I mean more like agreeing with someone.
Even agreeing with someone, it can protect you because you have agreed. That's what I mean. That's when it can get messy legally. Lots of people have regrets and say, well, I didn't really ask for that and you should have done that. No, it was written here. We both did it. And I think
there's no violence in the contract. The contract is legal.
no, you can't consent to anything even if it's not violent. So, like, if I scratch you and I don't mean to, and I leave more than a trifling or transient mark in theory, I've just assaulted you.
Yeah, well, if that's not mentioned in the contract, it's got nothing to do with damaging each other physically. If it's an emotional contract of dominance, it's not about.
But emotional is still illegal as well.
Okay, and it's also verbal.
Yeah, so the law changed 3 years ago now around actually it takes into verbal as well, and coercive control, money and different things are also classed as domestic violence. However, most of us do that in our fucking relationships because we're quinky, right? So a contract is all about agreeing with somebody else what it is you want to do and what your relationship will look like. It's not a bad thing to do because what you can do, I was just making the point of it won't protect you legally, but it can protect you as well. It's a good thing to bear in mind. However, you can't prove any of that. But for me, the way it works is that we both know that we're on the same page. We can revisit it, we can update it, we can change it, but then we both know what we're doing together, and this is what we're going towards. And I think that contract needs to hold everything that we're going to do physically, emotionally, and what our relationship could look like. Who here works for a living? Did you sign a contract?
Yep.
No. Did you read it?
Yep. I altered it as well.
Did you? That's fine.
Did they notice?
I altered it, signed it, sent it back, and they agreed that's your formal contract. So I changed my working hours.
There was a man who stole quite a lot of money from a bank by doing that.
Oh,
They
yes.
sent him a contract, and he just changed the parties in the contract, and they were in debt to him.
And it can happen, and it's really difficult, like, because morally, legally. But the thing I would say is that we all work, and we often sign a contract, and maybe some of us don't work, and maybe some of us don't sign contracts. It's really interesting then that one of the most important things, which although work takes up a lot of our time, when we're about to engage with another human being, we don't contract. Whereas actually when I'm working with couples or thruples or polygroups who come to me, I start going through bronzes, silvers and golds. What are the rules in your relationship? What do they look like? What's flexible? What isn't? What's hard and fast? What's soft? And let's agree them. And you'd be shocked, so shocked at how many people come and say, well, we haven't really spoken about it. We've been together for 20 years. Or, well, I thought they meant that by that. I want them to be loyal to me. The fuck does loyal? I'm not stupid, right? I've got a lot of letters after my name. I know what loyal means. I don't know what it means to you, and I don't know what it means to you. I bet you don't really know what it means to each other. I had one of my clients who'd inherited quite a lot of money, been around the world, both worked with the police, had a wonderful time. He went on his stag do, and his brother paid somebody to have sex with him. He didn't know about it. He was fucking legless. One of their gold rules was not to have sex with anyone else. They were a monogamous couple. They didn't ever think, and we were about to bring it up in the next session, I was anyway, about, does that include when somebody doesn't consent then? Like, what about those times? And this person jumped on him, they were in a very private club, got his cock out, rode him 4 or 5 times up and down. He pushes her off, he's in tears, he zips himself up, his brother's laughing outside, he thinks it's hysterical, he thinks it's really funny. He runs home to my client, sobbing, and tells her all about it. She is loving, understanding, she's very clear that that's sexual assault and or rape, and that, you know, their gold rules changed. Their gold rules were, don't ever get that fucking legless again. And another gold rule was, your brother is out of our fucking lives. He's a cunt. So I think it's really important to have and define what our relationship looks like. Even if we're not going to write it down in the contract, at least have a fucking conversation, because you don't. You just expect somebody, and that's the biggest enemy of any relationship is expectation. We expect how someone's going to be, what they're going to say, what they're going to do, and then we get disappointed, and they didn't even know. How do they stand a chance? So sometimes when you're writing a contract, it actually makes you think about those things differently. So it's not a bad thing to do. BDSM contracts you can find online. There's lots of them about ownership, about authority transfers, and you can change them and bastardize them and work with them, and they're fine. Relationship contracts are also out there as well. You can look at those. There are loads if you just Google them. And actually, it's bring your own stuff into it. It's a stimulant to get talking. The same as I think a list is. They're all about the stimulation that it brings.
Time.
Yes, it is time. Thank you very much for your time.